Welcome back to session 11. We hope that you're enjoying these sessions. You only have 2 more left, this one and the next one. And so, you know, honestly, I think you should get credit just for suffering through Reggie and I by itself. But according to the syllabus, you have projects. And so check your syllabus and make sure you're getting your projects in on time and that you get your end project done by the last part of the trimester. So can't wait to see those projects and hope you're doing well. And we'll let Reggie take it away.
What are these projects like?
I don't know yet.
Me either. So you're going to help us. Are you going to edit that out?
Nope.
Okay, good. Well, your projects are going to set the bar for every group that follows. So do a good job and change the world through it. Cool deal. Thank you very much.
Do I still have to go do disciple work for them?
You can stay right here if you'd like to.
No, I'm going to go sit down.
Yeah, I don't blame you. You're going to go back to what you've been doing. Now, we have 2 more sessions to go. For you, this feels like you're bright and fresh, and you're just coming to this. And those of us who've been taping this have had to listen to me all day. You should see these poor suckers that are bent down, persecuted here. But you're sitting there with a cup of coffee, laid back, relaxed. And I'm glad you are, because I'm going to talk to you about some other stuff that feels kind of like I'm messing with you. I would never want you to think that way. But there are some other issues as we're thinking about self-management last time as part of our personal development, which again, why is personal development a key part of being a disciple or a missional follower of Jesus? And I know in chorus you are saying, because becoming the person that God wants us to be is the way we become a missional person. You're exactly right. Way to go. You aced the test. Forget the project. You don't even have to send it in. So you'll be covered because he's got plenty of projects he could just make up on the spot. In terms of other things to manage, I talked about expectations. There are difficult emotions that frequently accompany, by the way, all of these. And I just wanted to touch on these before we go to a kind of not difficult is the word I'm trying to write up, because this really becomes a point of growth and challenge, and can become a real crisis point for some of us. Learning to manage difficult emotions is part of everybody's life, especially part of leaders' lives and stuff. But they become they're so, like, for instance, anger is such a difficult emotion. Now, you don't hear me saying, I don't want you to hear me say, you shouldn't be angry, because I've already told you we don't deny emotions. It's just what we do with them. And whether or not, you know, we are explosive with our anger. I mean, I've seen people lose I've seen people lose decades, it seems like, of work, you know, with an explosive episode that just seems to undo the world around them, and people can never get over it. Or I see other people that just seethe internally, and their hostility just grows and grows, and it becomes a real critical spirit that just is like acid. It just eats the relationships in their life. It's just so corrosive, not only on their own soul, but on the souls of the people around them. And so you've got to deal, because you're going to feel angry. I mean, the scripture says, you know, be angry, but you know, just don't sin about it. And you're dealing with your anger before the day is up. For instance, I always, when I was doing marriage counseling as a pastor, I would talk to couples about, you know, the disagreements and how they dealt with conflict, different styles, different preferences, but also to that point that, but if you make the decision that you won't go to sleep angry, you won't carry some deficit over into the new day. And while that sounds kind of an idealistic, that's something to strive for, because what you're trying to do is you're just trying to keep the excess baggage of undone stuff. Get over it, move on it, deal with it. Now, I understand there can be transgressions that won't be solved in a 30-minute discussion, but so much of that happens, it seems to me sometimes, because we've developed a pattern then of transgressing because we've not been having these ongoing discussions where we kept the plate clean with each other and with God, for that matter. So dealing with anger is important, but it's not the only difficult emotion. I'm finding, and it's tough to tag it as an emotion, but I'm finding an increasing disconnect where people, if I said loneliness, people misread that. It's hard for me to put this, but it is a sense of being alone together. It's like we've never been more connected. I mean, everyone I'm around, if I'm walking through an airport or I'm somewhere, it's 8 out of 10 people are working on their phones on the plane train between concourses. No one's talking to each other. Or you see a bunch of teenagers all sitting around, and they're not interacting with each other, all on their probably emailing or tweeting one another this far apart. I know husbands and wives who communicate with each other in the same room through email. I mean, this is a connected world, but it's a weird connectedness. I'm not saying this because I'm a troglodyte, although I could be elected to that maybe, but it's not an aversion to technology because I use all of those things, but as a substitute kind of way of feeling connected but never really having to commit. I'm afraid that we are losing in some capacity our ability to actually communicate and form relationships. I'm thinking of as student ministers that I talk to that talk about young men don't know how to ask, to have conversations with particularly young men who tend to be socially slower to the table than these young women, and then they don't know how to engage girls, in face-to-face, honest conversation like those of us who had to learn in another era. So the Facebooking and the inappropriateness of some of what they say and the clumsiness of that kind of exchange. All of that, all I'm saying is I'm running into more and more people that are feeling isolated. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for. Even in the midst of all of our connection, people who are isolated. And I think that this is something for you as a management piece because it doesn't have to be. It's not an absolutely, it's not something that's scripted for you. I think it's something that we choose and that we can be careful about. And so I think that's a difficult emotion because when we feel isolated, I will tell you this, that isolation is one of the key strategies of the enemy to keep your soul from becoming whole. Because we need others, and if the enemy can isolate you, I will tell you that you're going to feel there's a sense of unaccountability and anonymity, and it takes off some bad. I just sat down on the plane not long ago, and the gentleman beside me, I'm nesting in my spot. And I've put my stuff overhead, and now I'm doing it. And he had gotten up to let me in, and I kind of noticed he had kind of a sweater type thing around him, kind of like, but I didn't really pay. It's a hustle bustle. You got to get out of the aisle so other people can get by. And I sit and as I'm pushing my briefcase satchel thingy under the seat in front of me, I just said, "How you doing?" Kind of like this, and he said, "Not so good." Now, that is not what you expect to hear, especially seated next to someone you're going to be strapped in with for the next 2 hours, because not so good may mean I have the world's pandemic, in my chemistry that I'm about to unleash to the world. So I did turn to pay attention, and he is sweating, and I'm really nervous now because I just changed seats to get this prized spot. And but then I also noticed it's not all sweat. He's also crying. This is not typical. And I said, "Well, what's wrong?" And he said, "I have really effed up my life." And he repeated that several times in case I missed it, or in case somehow I didn't understand the meaning of that word. I have really, and the storyline that follows, this is before we even closed the door on the plane. The previous night he had And he was 26 years old, travels, leaves home on Monday, comes home Thursday every week. The previous night had been involved in asking a woman up to his room, had been flirting with this for some time, married for 2 years, tried to settle down, pattern of behavior, had messed up the night before, had chickened out at the last, chickened out, his words. And told the lady when he got, I can't go through with this, you need to go home. What he did not realize is he had pocket called his wife, and she had heard the whole exchange, and frankly, it's the best call he ever made. And so the phone rings to his hotel room as the other lady goes out the door, and his wife saying, "What are you doing?" And of course, and it's, now who can make a story like this up? And I'm just, like this, and I haven't even, like I say, and he doesn't care who's hearing or whatever. I will tell you that we had a good chat about things, a lot of things. We prayed together. He didn't care. Trust me, people in that kind of crisis, they don't care. They are wide open for help because he's going home early. He canceled a meeting to go home. He doesn't know what's waiting on him when he gets there. He had emailed his wife all night long this long apology. He was abject. She had written back to him just before he got on the plane to say, with God's help, we can make it. And I said, this woman that you are married to is an argument for cloning. If she has that attitude and that willingness, then you've got something to work on here. The guy is a follower, says he's a follower of Jesus, and I don't doubt that he is. I have no reason to doubt that. Followers of Jesus make mistakes big time, and he's dealing with some addictions in his life. He's isolated. He has nobody. When I begin to strategize a way for him to live, to build accountability into his life, it's like no one had ever thought about that with him before. How could he be accountable on the road? You see, he has addictions, a sexual addiction that, he has broken every password that's ever been invented with his company computers and everything else to keep him off sites that he shouldn't be on. He's very driven. Now, besides counseling, which he has agreed to go to, there's some things that he's going to have, because he's not going to be able to carry a ball and chain around him and blind himself and stuff. So he's going to have to build in some accountability. No one has ever talked to him about this before. How you can ask the desk, don't cut those channels on my TV in my hotel room. Or calling in with people who he can report in every night. This is what I'm doing, this is what I'm not doing. He had no idea, because he has lived a life that is far, I think, too frequently now, a life of we're all connected, but nobody's really in our lives. Close up, close in. He is isolated, and because of that, the reason I thought of that is because of that isolation. You see, the enemy just has total, free, unobjective run at his life. Now, if that's you, and my hunch is that I didn't remember that story because I needed to remember it. My hunch is, somebody on this course needs to hear that. Get out of isolation. In fact, I'm feeling that very strongly right now. You need to get out of isolation. It's going to cost you incredibly dearly if you do not. And build in some accountability into your lives. You do not have to live this way, and you can get help, and I want you to come out and play. The enemy of your soul is the one that's keeping you isolated. There are other difficult emotions as well. Depression would be one. It's not an emotion, but it is a series of emotions, at least it manifests its way, and you're going to find that a lot of the things that show up in our, like in clinical depression, that we've just attributed to certain body ailments or whatever, all combined, you may be dealing with this animal. I don't know, and I'm not trying to doctor you through the online course here, But if you're have recently, you know, or if you're dealing with sleeplessness or the tendency to oversleep, if you're dealing with weight loss or a lot of weight gain, if you're dealing with the challenge of focusing your mind, or if you're dealing with feelings of impotence, if you feel, or omnipotence, by the way, taken together, just Google, read up on clinical depression, and see a very good friend of mine, CFO. He's this is a very responsible human being, but was unaware of the depression that he was fighting. He just thought he had kind of a rough patch. And you may need some help with this. You may need medication with this, depending on where your depression's coming from. It's been some of the great breakthroughs in helping people over these last years. And 85% of folks start their discussion of their depression with their own family physician. And so I'd encourage you to start there. And they probably know somewhere you can get some help. But by all means do it, because it will eat at you. It's like the cold of the soul. Or if you want to, read any of Arch Hart's books, H-A-R-T, former professor of psychology at Fuller, the dean of that ministry. And he went, dealing with depression in the ministry and other healing professions. What an awfully long name for a book, but what a powerful book. Or the adrenaline addiction, just any of Arch's, Arch Hart, short for Archibald Hart, get his books, read that, pay attention to those things. Now, I don't want to talk about this anymore because I'm getting depressed, just telling you about all of these difficult emotions that you're going to have to deal with. But life is difficult. I mean, what a great first sentence in Scott Peck's book, but it really is the truth. Life is difficult, and you're going to have to deal with this stuff. But you know what? Having a difficult life doesn't make you special. I'll tell you what makes you special is to decide that the difficulties will not be the book on your life, that you will use the difficulties to write a chapter of your life that is a life of being delivered from, through, and to. From these chains of the things that would keep your soul enmired, through the work that Jesus did on the cross, to a life of freedom and abundance. I don't mean pie in the sky by and by, lack of stress. We've already been over that. But I mean a person of such abundance, such blessing, that other people are drawn to the story of your life and say, how could I live in this difficult life with the same kind of life that you're evidencing? And if your life can only be explained by Jesus, then you're on the road to being his disciple. Now, there's another area of while we're dealing with these specific disciplines, and I'm only going to reference this because, in a sense, I've already dealt with it under another category. But self-development, I just want to mention it so that you can